Okay, this is our second session. And you've been following me for how long?
Probably, a couple months.
You found me on YouTube, right?
I found you on the net, and then went through YouTube.
So it was like you read Weight Loss Apocalypse. You were looking to do the protocol.
Right, I'm interested in doing that.
And in the process, you wanted to get help, and I'm like, okay, we got to go this other route. We need to figure this other stuff out. Can you see now maybe more clearly why I would say you need to pause on that protocol? We have some issues here that need to be broken up, dismantled, removed before you can do this. Otherwise, you're going to waste your protocol, repeat your cycle again, but yet it'll be worse because you've magnified your issues with body image because you're thinner, right?
Right.
Anyways. Makes sense now. So we were talking, you found someone online that really talks a lot about emotional eating and binge eating, right?
Right.
And I was trying to explain to you that the actual impulsivity you have with food is healthy. It's a sign of the brain working as it should. And you said, explain that to me, please.
Okay.
So, and I'm not sure if I've recorded this before, but the actual drive to eat that way is evolutionary psychology. When you look at the human psychological development over thousands and thousands of years, it was evolved in cycling food intake, seasonal intake. It wasn't... we didn't evolve in this massive abundance of food that, where we mass produce it, where we can have fruit in the winter, where in the where we can have fall food in the spring, like, melons in the, winter. So anyway, so we have this mass amount of food that we have all the time, but yet we still have the psychology of feasting before famine. We still have this amazing mechanism to obsess around how to get food, where to get it, how to store it. And it's hardwired and built into our mechanisms, right? But we live in a day where we worship thin supremacy, and we worship this concept of health righteousness, and we've attached it to the symbolism of healthiness to thinness. Right? So the idea around thin supremacy is also anorexic supremacy. You should not be eating very much, right? And with that comes this judgment around the impulsivity for people to eat. This like, there's something wrong with you. You have issues. That's why you're emotional eating. It's because you have issues with your life and your mother. And that was kind of the old approach to it for decades. And the current knowledge around it is changing because they're looking at human behavior from a distance, not from like this close, right? The obvious issue with your impulsivity with food, and how you reason and rationalize around it. But ultimately, if we take this shame around being overweight out of the picture, and we look at human behavior from a distance, your behavior is absolutely in line and mimicking people who would be introduced to a first world environment, but they come from a third world brain. Make sense? So if you were living in a third world environment and were introduced to foods, how do you think you would behave? That's a question. Are you there? Hello? Did you push mute?
I'm getting you. I think I would act like a kid again. To be introduced to food and to,
Yeah, especially food that you but let's make it even worse. Let's take you from a third world environment, put you in a first world environment, and then tell you can't eat those foods. You can't eat the foods that everybody else is eating. How do you think that would affect your behavior?
Yeah, that would be.
That would make it worse, right?
Right.
So in that circumstance, would you label that person as having emotional eating problems?
No, not.
Right.
Yeah, not.
And then they're hiding and eating these foods and in hiding. They become obsessive. Should we tell them they're addicted to those foods?
Right.
Should we try to look at their underlying issues with their mother?
Right.
Makes sense?
The attachment and all that.
Exactly. So the current understanding or the current theories around this behavior is that you're actually triggering these mechanisms that have been hardwired into our system from millions of years of evolution as far as the fight or flight need to make sure we feel safe with food. They actually, the discussion around this was going on in the 1940s and 50s with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes.
Okay, the foundation of his hierarchy is we will not, our fight or flight mechanisms, our brain's well-being, or the well-being of our behavior and our thoughts and psychology is founded on our safety and security with food. And how we evolved psychologically is to strive to secure that first and foremost. So when you're chronically dieting and shaming food and trying to restrict food, is it fair to feel that your needs to feel safe and secure with food is unhealthy?
Yeah.
You get my point? So your actual impulsivity to feel safe and secure with food, to feel that you have enough food, to feel that you have adequate food, that you can enjoy food, that's actually very healthy. The question is, why are you depriving food to the point that you're triggering this need? Where's the unhealth? The actual act of you trying to secure your food, or this offensive attack on your food? Which one's unhealthy?
The first one or whatever. I mean,
your desire to get food is absolutely normal. Everybody would do it. In fact, 97% of all dieters are having these impulses, so it's not a special psychological problem.
Right.
The second one is, why are you restricting to such a degree that you're actually triggering primal hoarding mechanisms? Your hoarding mechanism or your feast before famine mechanism is absolutely healthy. It's working as it should.
Right.
Now do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I did not know that. I mean, I just thought
that you had problems.
Lack of control, or I didn't know it was hardwired into me. It makes sense now that if I step back and think about it, that it's evolution.
It is evolutionary because it is the foundation of our individual survival. If you do not have enough food or water and you don't have a way to get food, your brain is going to go crazy. It is the foundation. We're not just talking about it's a part of our psychology. No, it is the foundation of psychology.
Right.
And what do you think? Why do you think the massive amounts of people dieting right now have to isolate themselves from reality to control the food they need to make sure they're pure and clean and healthy? Why would they have to isolate themselves to such an extreme degree and to control themselves to such an extreme degree? What are they trying to control? Their evolutionary psychology to make sure they have enough food.
Right.
You've got to.
They don't even know that, really.
No. They have no freaking clue that they are organizing. They are compartmentalizing. They are somewhat obsessing over what's in their food, obsessing over what on the labels. Why do you think that is? That's an actual response to the drive to get the food. And they're trying to manage that impulsivity through control.
Interesting.
Right? And what is this whole crazy train of off and on and off and on and off and on and off and on, starve, binge, starve, binge, starve, binge. What's it all founded on? Your desire to be thin?
Right. Yeah.
So the theory or hypothesis, because I don't think this has been tested, so it would be currently a hypothesis. Excuse me. The air here is super dry. It's like -10 degrees. So the hypothesis is that a third tier need, which is our pack animal needs, it is absolutely wired into us to want to feel likable, lovable, because we're pack animals. That's also very evolutionary to our needs, but it's third tier. It's not the foundation of our survival. You know, oftentimes I'll ask, what is the foundation of human survival? And a lot of people think love. No, that's actually third up. Third up. Still there, but it's not. It's food and water.
Right.
You could survive a long time on your own with no other human beings if you just have food and water. And shelter, which is number 2, right? So shelter is actually more important than other humans. Once you have food, water, and shelter, okay? And when I say, okay, let me just stay on that thought. Once you have food, water, and shelter, the next level up is, I want to be surrounded by people. I want to feel loved. I want to feel lovable. I want to feel like I have a connection. I want to feel connected. Because that's actually evolutionarily necessary for survival as well.
Right.
You're statistically more likely to survive just by having one other human with you. Just one. That skyrockets when you can have children with that person, right? When we can have a baby, right? So look at our foundation of psychology and notice how the hypothesis is that third level of need, you have attached your lovability to thinness. So you're trying to secure, I'm lovable if I'm thin. So you've attached that security to thinness. And here's something to know too. Anything that is necessary in survival stimulates the narcotic area of the brain. Okay? Food absolutely is a narcotic. It should be. There's a reason for that. Right? When you feel safe and comfortable in your home, especially as a nesting person, you're getting high, right? Your brain is going to light up. That area of the brain, that's the cocaine center of the brain, is going to look like you're on cocaine if you were to do a brain scan.
Okay.
Right? Similar to when you feel lovable, you're actually getting a narcotic high. These are evolutionary. It's supposed to work that way. It's like the brain saying you're safe from death. Okay? So the idea that if you're thinner, you are lovable actually stimulates the narcotic area of the brain. The downside to that is that if you don't feel thinner and lovable, you go through withdrawals. There's angst, irritability, fight or flight, inflammation. Okay? Same thing with, I don't feel good in my home. I feel unstable in this house. I don't feel safe here. You're going to have angst and you're going to have the same withdrawal. It's how the brain has evolutionarily gotten humans to do shit to survive. Similar to, I don't have enough food. I don't have adequate food. They have more food than I do. You're going to have, or food isn't enough. We don't have enough. Food is going away. Talk about the most insane inflammation in your brain and spinal cord and the whole entire endocrine system. Which ones, if you were to measure inflammation from I'm not lovable to I don't have enough food, which one do you think is going to create the most insane obsessive compulsive problems? You got it. So in terms of
higher need or whatever.
Yeah. So what do you think is more inflammatory, sugar or this fight or flight need to make sure you're safe with food?
fight or flight.
You know it. You got it. Nowhere close. Not even comparable.
Right.
So demonizing food. Demonizing food. How do you think that impacts that first hierarchy of need in terms of your evolutionary psychology and foundation of well-being?
I mean, it works against it, or it kind of,
triggers the impulsivity for you to feast before famine.
Right. That cycle or whatever. I mean,
so when we look at the concept of emotional eating and binge eating, why would you should we even talk about the actual food or even the reason behind it? How you justify and rationalize your food consumption? Is that even necessary if we actually look at why is food under threat?
Right, yeah.
Because you wouldn't negotiate for food, you wouldn't rationalize reason and even connect to food in a dysfunctional way if there was no threat.
Right.
So, for example, if you won the lottery and all of a sudden you're given this family heirloom castle, okay? You go into this castle and you're permanently going to live there. I mean, we're talking old money that goes so deep that everybody's going to die around you and you're still going to have your money in your house and this amazing amount of food that you can buy and store and hoard, whatever. Okay? So go into this prevalence of food. I want you to imagine you're in this castle and you go into the dining hall and there's this table that seats hundreds of people and food is on it. And there's over 50 chefs from around the world and they can fix anything you want, anytime you want. And anytime you want something, whatever it is that you want is restocked immediately. And it's not just food that chefs can make. It's food that's like, on the shelves in any type of, grocery store. Fast food.
Right.
You can get cereal. Anything is at your fingertips. It's like this mega abundance. I call this the table of abundance. And the most amazing part about this table is that it will always be there. It always restocks. It's never going away. So anytime you're hungry, you can get anything on that table. And you go to get, let's say, some chips. Let's say you just want some Fritos and a bowl of chili. More Fritos shows up and more chili shows up and 10 varieties of chili show up. And if you don't like Fritos, you can use this and this and this and this. And it's all there all the time, no matter what.
Right.
How does that feel? Imagine that's real and permanent.
I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, now you put it like that, it's amazing. Because
you mean it's a narcotic stimulant? Just the thought?
You totally lose your need or desire because it would just be right in front of you. I mean, you would just be like, okay.
Yeah, you lose that
need. A handful of that and I'll be good.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't have to hold that thought anymore. I don't have to hold the thought of, do I have enough food? Where am I going to get it? How am I going to get it? Is it safe? Can I eat it? You don't even have to hold that in your mind. You can just black it out.
Right.
It's like, I don't have to manage this. I can just, when I'm hungry, I can think about it. I don't have to hold on to the thought. That right there is super healthy. The idea that you're holding on to the thought of food all the time is actually very healthy if you are in a third world environment. It's supposed to work that way.
Right.
Once you have this abundance of food where it's delicious, it's tasteful, it's abundant, it's restocking, you don't have to find a way to get more. There's enough for everybody. That kind of fits all of those needs in our hierarchy of needs, and all of a sudden the brain melts. It's like, I don't have to hold that tension. You could feel it just in thinking about it. You just thought about it and could feel that response in your brain. You actually just experienced a biological, neurological response just by thinking about it. You could tell there is a difference. Wow, it's amazing. I relax. Yes, that's what it feels like. Just the thought of having abundance, permanent, changes your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
So should we stop and fixate on why you have this impulsivity and emotional eating issues and think about why you're having the triggers? You getting my point now?
Now it's kind of obvious or whatever.
It is when you actually know the issue. Well, you wouldn't have this issue if you didn't first want to lose weight. Second, you didn't believe in health righteousness around food. That segregates the food as bad, dangerous. One bite is just as bad as eating the whole thing. Dangerous. That's the other thing. You're being taught a mental construct of bad food. But the problem with that is it completely is a mismatch to how you're biologically responding to that food. Evolution would say if this food is dangerous, it should be extremely bitter. It should be, but yet the food I'm eating is highly palatable. So it's conflicting. You have a mental construct of what's bad, but yet biologically you're not having the same response. So every time you eat this food that they've told you is dangerous, you actually don't have any danger at all. But yet you're supposed to withhold it. And the withholding of it is actually creating the danger of the impulsivity to binge on it. Now the food's dangerous because you're binging on it, because you feel like you can't eat it anymore. You're triggering that biological response to binge because you shouldn't eat it. Because one bite is just as dangerous as bad. So the diet industry is cognitively distorted how you feel about food to where at that table of abundance, half of it you can't eat while it's there. So imagine that table of abundance, okay, and you're brainwashed through food morality. That's bad for you. This is bad for you. Oh my God, people who eat this are dumb. One bite of this is going to cause cancer. So get rid of the Cheetos. This is how bad it is for you. One bite. So there's no distinction around dosing or dependency around how much, which is super uneducated, right? But yet you're believing all this crap. So what happens when you sit at the table of abundance and you can't eat most of it, but yet everybody else is eating at it? And you're not allowed to. You have to have a tiny little plate because that tiny little plate helps you regulate your food intake. And it has vegetables and some dry fish. Okay. But yet how do you think when it's your birthday, what are you going to do at that table?
Well, hopefully then I will be allowed to eat what I want, huh?
Well, because you have, so now we have a reason, right? Now we're negotiating with that diet hierarchy, this authority that has created this dogmatic, I am the gatekeeper of your health. I'm going to tell you what's healthy. You're negotiating with that diet construct for why you deserve to have some cake. Because on every other day I can't have cake, but now it's my birthday and I get to have cake. And guess how much cake you're going to eat that day?
I'm going to eat as much cake as I want because it's my birthday.
Right? And not only that, but you're not going to get cake tomorrow. So, and you've already ruined it. So you might as well eat the cupcakes, the cake. You might as well go and get whatever bad foods you can't eat at that table. You should go get it because you can only eat it today. So you end up having that day full of food. And then they're going to tell you, oh, you have a binge eating disorder, psychological problems. We need to look at that. Oh my God, that food is addictive. You have emotional issues. Maybe you should think about this emotional connection you have with food. Not even considering that the restriction is the problem. That you're actually emotionally dieting. But that is coming from this emotional desire to be wanted 3 tiers up in terms of your psychological needs. So you have a small guy, it's still there, a small need competing with a massive need, and it just goes in circles. Small, big, small, big, small, big. So you end up most of the time binging and emotionally eating and very limited amounts of dieting. Right? No one's questioning, oh, you have emotional issues with body image and which is really actually an emotional issue with not feeling lovable. Like we really need to look at why you've attached thinness to lovability. Obviously, it's a social program that exists, right? What's the difference between foot binding 100 years ago in China, and thin supremacy and anorexic ways that women have to look today to feel valued.
No, nothing.
No, it's just a different binding.
Different time or whatever.
Yeah, instead of binding feet, we're binding your food, trying to make you look adolescent. It's really about, female positioning below the men, trying to survive under starvation just to prove that you're worth something. Why don't men have to starve to prove themselves? I know there are men that do. A lot of them are in the gay community, right? But in general, the majority of people suffering from this are women.
Mm-hmm.
Why do women have to continue to look adolescent to feel valued even when you're 40?
I mean, because that's what society tells us right now.
Well,
that's what we're bombarded with.
Yeah, the problem is, should you get your self-worth from society worth? So this is where evolution, we have to kind of break out of that evolution, because evolution would tell us that you need to blend with your pack, right? That if otherwise you're going to get rejected. And evolutionarily, rejection meant you're out in the wilderness by yourself and you're certainly going to die, which is why we have fight or flight to that. It's actually absolutely healthy to be afraid of rejection and abandonment. That isn't a mental illness either. The goal is that we desensitize that for you, that you are very consciously and cognitively aware of what you are and what you're not willing to do for approval, and what you are willing to be rejected for. There is a very clear understanding. Most people have this understanding with religious zealotry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were walking down the street and someone's picketing, you're going to go to hell because you are going to Planned Parenthood, okay? Because you're poor and you need to get a pap smear, or you need to get birth control, or you're pregnant and you need pregnancy help, right? Let's just do that. And they're picketing, saying you're going to hell, you're a slutty little bitch, God hates you. How does that feel? Do you stop and say, what? Oh my God, no, that's not true. Do you sit and argue with that?
No, I wouldn't believe them. I would think they're crazy or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, so it doesn't really impact you, does it? I mean, you're like, these poor people, they have no freaking clue what they're talking about or what they're doing.
Right, whatever. Yeah.
Correct. So you don't take it serious. So you're not sitting there going, oh my God, they rejected and abandoned me.
Right.
But if you're going to see your doctor and there were people saying, this is the obesity epidemic, all you people are lazy and dumb and you don't know what you're eating.
Right.
You would be terribly disappointed in yourself and embarrassed, right? Because you think that's real. It's a paradigm that you think is real versus other paradigms that do exist that you don't take serious. If you don't take it serious, it doesn't impact your psychology because you don't want to be a part of that group. But you want to be a part of the thin supremacy group. I want to be in the cool clique with all the thin girls.
Right. Right.
And so that's why it impacts you psychologically. So the goal here is to desensitize your need for thin approval. So how do we do that? Because if you didn't have that need for thin approval, would you be restricting foods at the table of abundance?
No.
Would you be put in a position to negotiate for food on your birthday or when you're bored?
No.
Right?
No.
So notice how we don't have to talk about emotional eating in any way. We don't have to in any way. It all goes away when you surrender this idea of thinness and remove the diet restrictions. Remove completely, not just I can't eat this, it's that's bad for me. I shouldn't eat very much of it. The fear of food has to be removed too. Not just diet fear, just fear of health bullshit as well. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a little bit, starting to make sense.
Okay. So what has to be desensitized, I'm going to repeat this again, is your need for thinness to feel lovable. So we need to, in other words, to simplify this, that third hierarchy of need, the need to feel I am lovable, we have to completely detach and sever from thinness. The other thing that has to be separated is because you have a larger body, you have to detach that I'm not lovable from fatness. Lovability from thinness and not lovable from fatness. You have to completely remove that from the equation of your worth and safety and security as a human being with yourself. So no matter what others say or believe or think, you no longer need their validation one way or the other, which means I don't need someone to compliment me to feel good about myself. I don't want those people in charge of my psychological well-being.
Right.
Want me to repeat that? You do not want other people in charge of that third hierarchy of need. If you need other people to validate your worth, you are now dependent on them for your inflammation to go down, right? That third hierarchy of need is now in their hands. And you will stay stuck in this social anxiety and angst and nervousness and compartmentalizing and trying to fix. And you're going to stay in the angst of trying to feel lovable by using other people's opinion, which means you are sensitive to social programming, which the social programs aren't moderate, are they? They're narcissistically extreme. So you're sensitive to narcissistic ideology, which ultimately creates this passive narcissistic conditioning in your own brain.
Right. Yes.
Which is, I'm inferior and I need to do this to be superior, which is the system that's been in place for, 50 years.
Right.
So the goal is that you do not need any type of construct to feel valued. So the question is, if we remove all programming, to include religion, to include body image, to include education, to include politics, to include everything. If you're on the planet in some other country and all of those systems no longer have any worth or value, how do you find individual human value to where you feel valuable based on what's truthfully, simply built in to you as a human being? The goal is to make it truthful and currently existing, right? These are human values that we're all born with. No one can give it to you. No religion, no system can say, we'll give you that worth. You're born in it. You're born with it. You're born with kindness. We're all born that way. We're born with compassion. It's like, do dogs have to go to dog school to wag their tail?
No.
Well, we could do that and make tons of money and say, you're wagging wrong.
Right.
Well, they're wagging their tail. The meaning is love, excitement. They're pack animals too, right? So how do you wag your tail for yourself? That's the question. What makes you feel I'm lovable as a human being? What are my human being standards as a human that make me lovable? It's very simple and very, very foundational to who you are. I came up with, I just know I'm a good person. However you define that. I know I don't mean harm to anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody. That's me. That's internal. No one taught me that.
Right.
I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to and at times if I do, it's not intentional. It might be an unintended consequence of a decision I've made. And if I knew that ahead of time, I probably would have changed my decision. However, you know that in hindsight. So no matter what, my integrity is truly to do no harm. To have fun. That was how I felt. I've always felt that way. I want to have fun. I want to laugh. I want to woo. That's me.
Right.
But isn't that all humans? So do I need to separate myself and say, I'm special because I don't want to do harm, and that's what makes me a good person? No, we're all that way. But you have to find that in yourself. You have to say, well, that's good enough for me. I don't need to meet this grandiose scale of importance to feel safe. Because ultimately, if I set my third hierarchy of needs so flippin' high that it requires obsessive compulsiveness to attain, you're going to live a life of inadequacy and inferiority complex, which ultimately ends in narcissism, self-righteousness, right?
Right.
So if you feel right now with all of your social failure, right? You're not smart enough. You're not young enough. You're not thin enough. You're not hot enough. You don't have the right degree. You don't have the right religion. Your politics is wrong too. I mean, let's just talk about how much failure you have socially. It's me too. I am super inadequate. I'm wearing the wrong shirt. I don't have makeup on this morning. I didn't even do my hair. I'm drinking coffee. That's so bad for you. It's so acidic. Oh my God, your teeth. And cream. Oh. How can she be out there talking to people about health when she's so unhealthy? I'm taking the wrong vitamin D supplement. I'm taking fish oil and not krill oil. Should I be like krill oil? It's better than fish oil. The layers of failure going on right now. My language. Someone's going to write a complaint right now about this session, about how I'm misguiding people about something. And maybe I am. I'm doing the best I can. I mean no harm. My goal is to help. Oh, right? In 5 years from now, I'll watch this video and go, God, I wish I would have approached it this way with her. It might have been so much easier, but I had to go through that really tough task of explaining the hierarchies of need. Mm-hmm. I don't know to do it better until I know to do better. So it's evolution working right now. Mm-hmm. So, so go into your failure, how shitty you actually are. Should you feel bad about that?
No, I mean, I'm human.
You're human, but ultimately you're doing the best you can. Am I right or wrong with what you're doing? You've always done the best you could with what you were aware of.
Right.
You know, your awareness ultimately is dictating your choices, your awareness and your integrity. You combine those two together, and that ultimately is reality for you. So you could say, I want this, but what if that goal that I'm reaching high to get you're nowhere close to that awareness. You don't have the all-knowingness to know how to get there. Should you feel bad if your awareness is here because you can't get here right now, right? The all-knowingness, the future telling of ability, the ability to read other people's minds, to know what's going on in other people's integrity, and then managing that so that you can make as much money as you can to meet the paradigm of consumerism to reach your goal that you put on your board, your fantasy board. Make sense?
Right.
Because it's the law of attraction. The truth is it only can work with what you're aware of. That's it.
Right.
There is nothing else. And you can pretend like you're aware of more by reading books. But the truth is when you get in reality and you have to have discernment, you have to work with other people who are not necessarily controllable, is your knowledge at the current time that's what's functioning, not your book knowledge and memorization. Right? This is why you can study eating disorders all you want. You can study it, you can memorize, you can go to schools, you can go to classes, you can go to self-help, you can read all the self-help books you want. But if you're not changing your current awareness within your own mind, it's just frontal cortex knowledge that doesn't necessarily impact the actual emotional part of the brain. So it's useless.
Right.
It has to be useful while you're in that emotional state of mind. Not while you're doing just fine and reading about it. So here we are. Can you see why the approach is you really have to accept your body right now? What it takes for you to be willing to be judged, rejected, abandoned, disapproved of in the body you have right now, what that takes actually unravels your fear of it, which changes your brain chemistry. You're not going to fight or flight. So if your issues with fight or flight create the dieting issues, which create the issues with food, we got to flip that around and go the other direction, which is I'm not going to be afraid of this anymore. I'm not going to be afraid of people judging me. I'm going to expose that I was a liar. I lied about my body image. You know what I mean by that? I've lost weight, but it took obsessive compulsiveness to do that. I didn't let them know that. I wasn't aware of I was doing it either, but I would never recommend obsessive compulsiveness and thinness just to pretend like I'm reaching some standard pedestal, right? I'm putting myself on a pedestal as healthy, but I'm internally, psychologically suffering. So if I let all that go and I exposed that that's not even real, it wasn't true, I didn't feel good psychologically, I might have looked better physically, and you might have looked at me and thought and attached the symbolism of health, but actually I'm psychologically, I'm not doing well. And I have all these binging issues and psychological impulsivity to eat. So what I'm telling you, which is righteous, which is this way of eating and this way of being, is actually unsustainable for the person preaching it. Right? So there's embarrassment to come out of the closet as a fat person, especially for people who've lost weight and gotten an ego on it. You have to be embarrassed. Here I am, I'm actually fat. I'm actually don't really know what I'm talking about. The gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free way of eating actually didn't work for me, even though I wanted it to work. Right?
Yep.
So if we can go into staying this way. So let's go there really quick. If you had to stay this fat, okay? Permanently. Go into the permanence of it. The thing is, most people who go into this emotionally, they think about it and they know, oh, well, someday I'll lose the weight. Well, what if it is not, you're not to expect to ever lose weight again? There's no expectation or even hope it's not going to happen. Go into that as if it is not going to happen, that nothing you do will make it work. It will never be permanent, that you will always be this fat, and you could potentially go up 10 or minus, let's go plus or minus 10 pounds for the rest of your life. You'll always be around this size permanently. There will never be fat loss for you. This is biologically a set. It is not going to get better. The fantasy of you losing weight and like being super happy doesn't exist. Doesn't exist.
Okay.
How's that feel?
Well, it feels a little better than the first time. I think the first inclination is, of course, to fight it or whatever. But if you just kind of give into it, then you're like, you realize that I'm so much more than this.
Yeah. Well, you're right. The first inclination is to be upset about it, to be sad, to get angry, to feel victimized by it. And what does that victim position really? Where does it go? Poor me. I have to be this that. What's the point of that? That's usually the point at which people relapse. That's the relapse point. Like, if you're going to feel that bad about it, you're eventually going to get what you want, which is to be thin again. So you'll go through another cycling of dieting, which ultimately ends up with this impulsivity to eat because it's evolution to do that. And you're going to lose, right? You're going to lose, and you'll eventually regain all that weight, feel really bad about it. And you're going to end up right back here feeling bad that you're overweight again. And oh my God. So doesn't make sense to even feel like a victim, because ultimately, if you have to stay this fat or get fatter, ultimately the freedom in that is that you don't have to fix it anymore, right? That fixing it is the actual suffering, that cycle of suffering. that you're staying in. It's like staying in that primal animalistic state with food, that's suffering, where it's obsessive compulsive, it's all you think about. And you're being held hostage by your size and your weight, and you're constantly measuring, and you're using your Fitbit, and you're constantly using measures to see if you're successful or not with your food. And your food relationship is highly tied into all these measures, and it's insane. So does it make sense to feel victim if you get freedom from all that crazy? Truly.
No.
Right? Because if you're willing to just look at being this size, regardless of the size you are, it's relatively not good for everybody, whether you're 120 pounds or 250 pounds, 300 pounds. Right. It's relative to an anorexic. Being 150 pounds is devastating. Your state of mind, right? So no matter what size you are, if you're anorexic,
you're never going to be thin enough or whatever.
You never are anyways. That's the truth, because it's a state of mind. It's not a physical problem. It's not a physical thing. It's an actual psychological thing. So psychologically, if you're not capable of accepting the body you have right now, what makes you think you'll know what it feels like to accept the body you have later?
Right.
That feeling of acceptance is lacking. So how do we develop it? Well, you have to accept the body you're in right now. How do you do that? Well, make it permanent. Because if it's permanent, then you're not going to negotiate around it. Right? So you will have to be this size forever. Permanently. Look at it as if that's real. Breathe it into your lungs and open your eyes. That, for many people, causes a lot of fear and dissonance. They don't want to look at it. Because if I open my eyes and look at it, that means it's going to be permanent. Just by looking at it makes them have that, oh, don't do it. And that's your first instinct. That's what was my first instinct, and that's what everybody feels like. Keep their eyes shut. Okay, I'm pretending. But you're holding on to this hope that I'll be thinner later. So you really don't get the brain change.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you hope you're going to be thinner later, you have to keep your eye on your way. And you have to okay, I'm going to go tiptoe into these foods, but I got to keep my eye on my way, because I'm only going to give myself these foods if I don't gain weight or if I continue to lose. So you're still in that crazy train. But if we actually accept, if I had to be this size permanently, go into that reality, what would your life be like? Would you feel like a martyr? And for how long? If it's permanent, does it make sense to hide? Because that means your whole life is in hiding over something so ridiculous.
Right.
So if this is permanent, meaning you're not going to fix it, it's not going to get fixed. There's no hope for it to even go away. You don't expect to lose weight ever again. That means you have to kind of reconstruct what you think your life is about.
Right.
To reconstruct in your mind, well, what would life be like if I have a body that isn't ideal, that is judged by people who are ignorant because they have no idea how I got here. They think that I didn't try hard enough. They think I didn't want it hard enough. These people think that I'm uneducated, which is hilarious, right? Because it's the furthest thing from the truth. They can think that, but your reality, that's not true, right?
Right.
So can you handle, if you have to be this size permanently, how would you take people criticizing you? Knowing if you understand the truth of how you got here, how would you handle that? This is not negotiable. Do you really do their opinions have as much power?
Right. No, once you come to acceptance, then it's like the religious Zelda. You just know it's not,
they're ignorant.
It's not mine. It's
correct. It's like those people picketing telling you you're going to go to hell and God hates you. It's like, okay, they have no idea.
Right.
They think I'm,
Right.
So you just don't take it serious anymore because you're like, they just have no idea.
Right.
Unfortunately for them, because if they have that type of ignorance and judgment, how are they going to feel when they have that impulsivity to binge because they are over-restricting? They don't think their over-restriction is a problem, but now they have these impulses that they don't realize are about to show up. How are they going to feel when they gain the weight? Pretty shitty about themselves, right?
Yeah,
so you feel bad for them. It's more like, they have no idea, but they'll figure it out.
Right.
They'll have to go through, if that's what they think that my fatness comes from my lack of attempting to be thin or wanting to be thin or researching thinness or whatever it is, that's not true. Anyway, so would you care if you had to stay this fat? It's non-negotiable, and would you really care about what people think about it, especially people who are ignorant?
No.
No, you just would be like, whatever.
Right.
Would you be willing to suffer for someone else's opinion anyways?
No.
That kind of goes back to, would you let other people's opinion be they're the gatekeepers now of you feeling lovable?
Right.
Who should be defining your lovability?
Me.
Yeah, and ultimately, are you defining it, or are you using social parameters to define it?
Right. Yeah.
That's
right
really
now,
important,
right
because
now,
I want to feel good for me. That's why I want to lose weight. Oh, that's why, because you're using a social parameter, even though it requires that you suffer to get there. It's for me.
Right.
Okay, sure. It's actually for the social parameter.
Right. Sure. Unrealistic.
Well, and it's not taking into account this impulsivity to eat. So
right.
You kind of, where's the balance between, I'm willing to, how much of your mind do you want to dedicate to this? At this point, I want you to actually answer that question. At this point, truthfully, how much more of your life do you want to dedicate to this?
No, I want it to be done.
I want you to imagine another year of dieting, binging, overeating, feeling bad, dieting, binging, overeating, feeling bad. I want you to imagine another year of that. How's that feel?
Exhausting.
Trying another detox. I want you to try another program. You're going to try to do sugar-free again. And how does that feel?
Yeah. Exhausting. I mean, you just know it's setting yourself up for failure or whatever.
Are you fatigued? To where you're just like, I can't even imagine doing it another second.
Right.
Like, I am exhausted. I am fatigued, decades of fatigue now. To where someone presents you another diet. They're like, oh my God, this is the new thing. And you're like, oh my God, I don't know. I can't. It just makes you want to binge right away. You might as well just start binging. Right? Because it immediately triggers that, oh my God, food's going away. I mean, you don't even diet anymore. You're just constantly feasting. Because you're super fatigued. Right?
Right.
So where can you go? The only way to go at this point, when you get to this point, is you got to look at a permanent life with this body. Because otherwise you're just going to live a life feeling crappy about this body, but yet not wanting to do anything about it anymore because you're super psychologically fatigued. Right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So even though it hurts and it's hard, look at the body you have. Can you live in it? So would your life be okay in this body right now?
Yeah.
It's manageable.
It's healthy,
How would you go to the beach? How would going to the pool, going to the beach in a bathing suit feel? Going on vacation, how would you feel in this body? Dating in this body, having sex in this body. Would you be okay with that if this is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there'd be certain things that would be hard, but once you do it or whatever, you like to going to the beach.
What makes it hard? Why would it be hard?
You have to break down that barrier of like, okay, this is what it looks like bathing suit.
Well, what are you going to experience? The bathing suit?
No, I think it's more the shame or what the perceived shame with other people. You're still fighting that.
That's what creates the hardship. You're correct. The idea that you still need other people's approval.
Right.
So let's go back into the permanence of this. If this is permanent, it's not negotiable, and you're not going to do anything about it anymore because it's full of shit, disgust, and suffering.
Right.
Do you really care about other people's opinion? If you compare their opinion to the suffering, you suffer greatly, or their opinion. What would you rather have?
I don't care about their opinion.
No shit, right? Wouldn't you be like, oh, they can have all the opinions they want. I don't care.
I don't give a shit.
So I want to go back and ask the question. So what's hard again? What's hard? When you care about other people's opinion, that's hard. But if you're not going to do anything about it because you're choosing, it is not worth that type of insanity and suffering. I refuse to suffer for some random stranger's ignorant approval.
Right.
They get some weird sense of approvability. Actually, when you're thin, they don't even notice you. They don't care. No one cares, really. So it's that self-centered narcissism that thinks that everybody's life revolves around you at the pool. Ultimately, in the end, do you really actually care? What are you going to experience? Their approval or the beach? Which one would you rather have? Because you can get other people's approval with all the suffering that comes into starvation and impulsivity to eat. You can go back into that for their approval.
Right.
Or you can just say, I'm just going to go and enjoy the beach. So I want the beach without conditions.
Right.
I want their approval with shit tons of conditions. Or I want the beach with no conditions. Right? Which one would you rather have? Their approval? Tons of conditions and suffering?
No conditions.
Or open access to the beach in any physical body you want? Because the beach is the same. It's the same beach. It's the same birds. It's the same sand. It's the same temperature. It's the same sun. The same water. The waves don't change for fat people or thin people. It's the same experience. I'm receiving the experience of the beach versus receiving the experience of someone's looking at me and approving of me, or I'm receiving the experience of someone disapproving of me. If you don't care about disapproval, you don't receive any of it because it doesn't impact you. Whether they approve or disapprove of you, you're not going for approval or disapproval. You're going for the beach. Big difference, right? So the one question I have for you is this. If you were to be this size permanently, how would it change your perspective around the illusion of thin supremacy? Are thinner people really superior?
Yeah.
Well, you say that quickly, but go into the actual thought of that for a second and explain your answer. If you live a life that's free because you no longer are willing to suffer and you're accepting this body, truly, what is the difference between someone who's in their thin supremacist state of mind or in just a thin body, whether they think they're superior or not? Because there's plenty of people out there who are thin who don't have these issues because they don't have the narcissism around it.
Right.
They don't care. They don't value themselves because of thinness.
Right.
So imagine their experience compared to your experience. Really, what's the difference? Once you don't care about social opinion, what's the difference?
I mean, it's being free or whatever. I mean, I just don't have to.
There's really no difference. It's the same world you're experiencing.
Right.
You're just maybe experiencing it from a different physical standpoint. But other than that, it's the same sky, same smells, same music, same movies, same culture, same job, same situation, same everything is the same, really. To a certain degree, it's just how you position yourself to see it that's different.
Right.
So the need for thinness just goes away because you see beyond that condition. You're like, oh, it's the same world.
Right. It doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any different. same.
No. So the beach is exactly the same for fat people as it is for thin people. So
no more fabulous, you know.
Yeah, and the awareness of that comes from the shift from changing the conditions. You don't have to meet a condition anymore. So you're becoming less conditioned. You're more unconditional. Let's just use the beach. That when I become less conditional, you see that the beach is the same regardless of your paradigm. It's the same beach. To think it's different comes from your state of mind.
Right.
So the pressure to be thinner to just get to the beach seems absolutely ridiculous, doesn't it?
Right.
Completely ridiculous. If you want to go to the beach, just go to the beach. It's the same beach.
Right.
Being thinner doesn't change the beach in any way at all.
Right.
The thought that thinnerness changes the beach is the brainwashing. That is absolute fantasy. Complete fantasy. And even if, let's just go into the fear, even if everybody at the beach is mocking and rejecting you, go to that. Because that's the worst case scenario fear, right?
Right, sure.
The only reason that would affect you is if you care about their opinion. You could always go to a different beach, right? Right? You know, go to a nude beach. They probably wouldn't give a crap. As long as you're naked. That's the funny thing. It's like, go to a nude beach where they just don't care.
Right.
They probably wouldn't even care if you kept your bathing suit on. Because they just don't care. Anyways, that's a funny thought. All right, this session is over.
Okay.
Did that help you in any way? Think differently. What are you getting from this session? What's the one thing that's stuck in your head? Is there anything in particular?
Yeah, I just kind of thought from the whole fact that, you know, even if I get on the cycle and I lose the weight, even though I'm not going to be a different person. I'm still going to be the same person. There would be just something else to have to conform to, because then my hair wouldn't be long enough, or
You need to do more contouring on your face. You need to contour. Your eyebrows are not thick enough.
Right. I mean, you just, whatever it is, my religion wouldn't be good. I mean, you just have to let go and just accept. I mean, everything, like your body, and just not be concerned about the social constraints and what everybody thinks, and yada yada, you know.
Well, there's the parameters, and then there's actual reality. We can hold ourselves to something that we're not and feel bad about reality.
Right.
But the reality is the truth. The actual expectation is not.
Right.
So if in reality you're a complete and total failure to the systems, are you okay with that?
Right.
This is the best you can do. Really, if you think about it, you're doing the best you can with what you're aware of under the circumstance. You're doing the best you can with what's reasonable and with what's in reach. So does it make sense to feel bad?
Right. No, it doesn't make sense to.
What should feel bad is the standard that's unreachable under your current.
Right. Exactly. Perfection.
Yeah, that should feel bad. Like, no.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks.
Unrealistic expectations or whatever.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
It would be like saying, you know, my goal is to be whatever my birth weight was, you know, 6 pounds and 5 ounces.
Right? And that's how you're going to prove your worth as a human being, as a woman.
Right.
It's weird.
I never gained an ounce. Never gained an ounce.
It's just crazy. So go into the permanence of this body and go into the forecast of how that would impact your life. And go into it as if that is a real circumstance that you will never be thinner than this. This is it. Permanently. How would that impact how you relate to food, how you relate to people, how you relate to life? What would life be like if this was permanent for you? No negotiation, no hope for change, no expectation. There's nothing, no evidence, no proof. There's no way you're going to be thinner than this. How would that change the way you think, the way you live, the way you socialize, the way you feel about who you are as a human being? That ultimately we're going to rebuild your lovability. Ultimately, that's what we have to do to permanently get rid of this threat to food. Because if you have to be thinner, you constantly have to have threat to food, which means you constantly have impulses to overeat, which means you're going to constantly have to control them. And those controls actually constantly trigger this impulsivity to eat. It's like, okay, I'm going to stop recording. Thanks for sharing this.